Hello, Joe here, and welcome to the Indie Bandits podcast. With a lot of games delayed recently, Jimmy, Archie, and I thought we'd discuss whether games companies should be better at meeting deadlines, how marketing teams can create unrealistic expectations, and the best ways for consumers to react when delays are announced.
I mean, this isn't a new thing. Games get delayed all the time, but given what's going on in the world, more games are getting delayed. And this is happening in other industries as well. If you look at the film industry, every film this year has essentially been delayed. But bringing it back to games, you've seen things like The Last of Us 2 are getting delayed. I'm sure there's some other examples, like Final Fantasy 7 and Doom Eternal have managed to get themselves into people's homes. But besides this, without this pandemic, games do, most of the AAA side of things do get delayed, but I'm just kind of wondering what your guys' opinion on this whole, thing is, because they get delayed for reasons, and sometimes people get, really worked up about it, oh god, I can't believe X game didn't come out day and date when I wanted it to, which can be a bit of a frustrating thing. But at the same time, it's the idea that if a game gets delayed, surely it's going to result in a better product, okay? Which is a thing a lot of journalists go on about. It's more a positive message, and I'm all for it. But at the same time, in another way, games getting delayed means more money is taken, and more money has to be put into the budget. More people have to work longer, harder hours to meet that next deadline. So there's all these different things butting off each other, and I'm just kind of wondering, what's your general opinion on the idea of games getting delayed? Whether it's a good thing, whether it's a bad thing, who's, not that everyone's right or wrong, but is there a nice level middle ground for all of this?
Well, for me, I don't mind if games are. I think we've discussed this before, haven't we? Games are kind of artistic, creative endeavors, and I always think that should come ahead of the commercial side of it. But that's me being probably a bit naive. So I don't mind if they delay if it means the product in the end is going to be a stronger product.
Yeah, it's kind of, you see these people, obviously we're older now, so as much as we like games, we don't put our, I guess, as much, we don't need them as much as maybe, a younger kid would to kind of, pass the time or something like that. So you see examples of younger people, most, older people do this as well. I went through, the kids under the bus, but things being delayed and, kind of the consumer, getting pissed off about it in some ways. Yeah, I mean, do they have justification for being annoyed at something that didn't come out when it was said to, or?
I think that they are justified in being annoyed it didn't come out because, all the surrounding marketing made this promise to them, if you get me. The whole hype train that every game, gets before it comes out, at least especially ones with much larger budgets, leading towards release, the whole marketing effort is geared towards getting everyone really, really excited for launch. So I think you have a right to feel hard done by if you've had this marketing message hammered at you unrelentingly for months leading up to this specific date, and then the same company that was purposely trying to get you excited for a product lets you down. I think you are justified in going yeah, I feel cheated. You guys told me to get on board, and I did, and you wanted me to get on board because, the more hype around this, the more people will want to go buy your game, who in some cases will what they called pre-purchase the game.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you've pre-purchased a game, if you've already paid for it, then you have a legitimate reason to be annoyed because you've already shelled over the money for the product. Even if you haven't, your participation in this marketing message by building up the hype along with everyone else, especially in a day and age where you've got social media, you are sort of, by buzzing about this product, doing the marketer's work for them. So you've kind of invested your own time and energy into promoting a product by getting excited about it, and then you're sort of let down. So in that side, I can see how people will get annoyed. Personally, I don't get that involved. I very rarely buy a game on release because, I have a finite amount of money. I don't want to invest in something that might turn out to be shite. Games are expensive, and I don't want to buy them on release date. I want other people to buy them and then work out whether or not they're good.
So what is the
You know?
what is a fair reaction then for somebody who has pre-ordered a game, is looking forward to it, put the money down first, and it is delayed by regardless of what the amount of time is, but it is just delayed even by just a month. But some cases games can be delayed by like 6 months. Like you've seen that with Cyberpunk 2077. It's being it's delayed indefinitely now, I think, but originally it was supposed to be coming out this month, I believe, and before the pandemic happened, it got delayed. And I don't think it was because of Corona, but I don't think it was supposed to be coming out until like September now. So I mean, like, what is a fair way for the consumer to react to something like this, do you think?
I think if you've paid for it, you're entitled to be annoyed about it. But then I guess that's got to be tempered with the fact that you surely, when you're paying for it, want to get access to the best product possible.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand frustration and annoyance, but I would rather be frustrated and annoyed at a pushed back release date than be frustrated and annoyed at a game coming out unfinished and crap.
Mm-hmm.
I find it so, like the Cyberpunk 2077 situation, whilst annoying if you were someone who had gotten all hyped up for that game and it's been pushed back, that situation to me is more palatable than, say, the No Man's Sky situation where it comes out and it's nowhere near as good as everyone thought it was going to be, and you've paid for it and it's like a crap experience. Well, and maybe not the experience you wanted. I'd rather have them have delayed it than did what they did. So that would be my way of thinking about that.
Yeah, it seems like the most reasonable thing. Like, obviously, yeah, I kind of agree with you guys for saying. I think it's fair to have that disappointment, but I think in certain situations, like these things are like art at the end of the day. So not everything is clear cut in terms of when developing these things as they might appear. These things are great, but these things are like really, really complicated to put together, so anything can happen at any minute.
Yeah, I'd add that because they are like artistic products, then you're also investing in something that's not necessarily as quantifiable. I mean, like, for example, if you buy a car before it's finished being made, and then the car is delayed in its manufacture and you don't get your car on time, then you can be quite annoyed at that because you knew exactly what you were buying. They said they were going to do this, and then the production process was slowed. But obviously, with subjectivity and like artistic products, this isn't really about like the production line or production speed. It's more so about production decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, usually it's not because people haven't been working fast enough. I think in most cases it isn't because people haven't been working fast enough, because that would really do a disservice to everyone who works in the game industry who works really hard. And I think I think the delays come down to the fact that generally it's the commercial side of games. It's this, the game as a product and the game as art are at loggerheads with one another, because the game as art wants to be the best game it can be, and the game as a product needs to meet a release date. It needs to, generally, because there's a whole marketing campaign that goes with it. A game with zero marketing campaign, no one's going to notice if it's released on time or not. So I think in that respect, you've got to understand that you are buying this sort of nebulous product, this what's the word for it? Immaterial product. So it's not, even though it can come on a physical disc, you're not buying something that just gets produced in X amount of time.
Yes.
So I think every consumer that does pre-purchase a game has to understand that there are things that can go wrong. There are decisions that will get taken, and the people who are selling you the pre-purchase are not necessarily the people making the game. They're quite different departments of a big company.
Here's the thing then, like, what point then is this are delays a problem of creative ambition? Or they could probably be both. Are they a problem of kind of like marketing, kind of maybe setting the goalposts too early? So if you look at some games in the past, more so again with the AAA market, where you're setting deadlines like a year or two in advance of when that game is supposed to be coming out. And, that has varying results of being unsuccessful or successful. But if you look at a game like, I remember Fallout 4 didn't announce their release date until 5 months before it was coming out. So everything is pretty much set in stone at the minute. Like, they know where the games are, they know what the standard is, and surely
they can see the finish line.
And the finish line's much more in sight. But I mean, I don't think either one here is the problem. But I think the marketing side of things can definitely like interfere with maybe the let's say the expectation of like when this thing could not be released, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I mean the commercial aspects of the fact that it's a business will, I think, I don't think there's any way to fix the relationship between the more commercial people and aspects of running a games company or any creative company and the creative side of it. I mean, how many times have we heard about major fallings out between executives and producers and directors of films? Someone's got a creative vision for something and wants to be true to that, and there inevitably are people who work for the company, maybe senior stakeholders or investors, who want to make money from it. So there'll always be an issue of maybe some friction between those two parties. But I always see, and maybe I'm being naive about this because I know there's sometimes exceptions to the rule, but I always see a delay of a game as maybe the creative integrity winning through on that and being something that actually the people who are putting the most effort into the game, the creators and the designers, are the ones who maybe have won that argument and they actually want to delay it because they're not comfortable about releasing something that they don't feel matches their vision for that game. I don't know.
To add to that, I would also say how many times in any line of work, when you have marketers or a sales team, have they went and promised investors or clients or consumers the absolute world before they've probably went and even spoke to the people who provide the product. Because that's I think in most businesses, anyone who's had
that would make sense.
who's worked, I think anyone who's worked anywhere will have had this conversation with their boss, where their boss has come over and said, "Yeah, I said you could do this, and I said you could do it in this amount of time," and you've went, "Right, I don't think I can." That's, you've vastly over promised how quickly these things can be done, and I don't think I'm gonna make it. And they go, "Well, I'll just tell them anyway," and you do your best, and even probably even from the start, I think in some cases people are going, "We can't get this game out in 2 years," and they go, "Well, just try. We'll look at this back down the line. We'll schedule a meeting for 3 months and for 6 months and for 12 months and then 15 months," and probably at every meeting they're going, "I don't think we're going to make target. Well, we'll come back to us close to the time and we'll see how we're getting along, and redouble your efforts," kind of thing. I imagine this happens a lot, so it's not. I don't know if it's necessarily always just a win for the creatives, as much as it might be the commercial side of things has just over-promised and forced the creative side of things to under-deliver. And then it always looks bad, not on the marketers and the commercial side of things, but the actual creative side of things. I think it reflects badly on them, because some people, sometimes they'll go, "The game was not where we wanted it to be," or "We've made some changes and we're trying to make this as good as possible." In other cases, a lot of people just look at it as they weren't working fast or hard enough to get it out on time.
That's the most annoying thing. You see that quite a lot with people generally on the internet. Nobody who works in the industry of the idea that the reason this game was delayed or didn't come out to the necessary expectations, that these developers are lazy. And I'm pretty sure some of these people are like the hardest working people, in the entertainment industry. It's
I'm surprised they take that view. I'd say like my default view on that is they've delayed it to make it better. I don't think I've ever thought they've delayed that because they can't be arsed.
Because they're like keeping their feet up, this game will come out no matter what.
Yeah, a lot of consumers act like the games company is like fucking Scrooge McDuck,
like them,
just sat on piles of their money in every game.
Yeah, exactly.
Going, I'm diving into my pool of gold coins right now, is fuck yous kind of thing. And it's like, no, we've been in crunch for like the last fucking 6 months.
I think as well, there's people maybe not understanding that there's a difference between the people who are actually tangibly making the game and the company as a whole. There's two different objectives going on there. One of them is to make the game the best they can, and the other one is to make as much money as they can from the game. And those two things are very, very separate, but there has to be an awareness of that. People can't just make multi-million-pound games and not make some money back from it. It's impossible. You have to have those two things working together.
I think this is general, ignorance, I guess, of people, like the majority of people, like understandably so as well, don't really understand, know what goes into putting something like this together. And because there's, you can, download things like Unreal and Unity on your computers, and I think that kind of gives people the impression that, this is, anybody could do this. But these things are, ludicrously, complicated. I'm very much looking forward to something like Cyberpunk. I'm kind of glad it's delayed, but I hope everyone who's working there is, taking time to I'm sure they are. I've heard nothing good things about CD Projekt, but that game. I'm just you see the trailers of that, it's jaw dropping the complexities of content that is going into something like that. So it makes sense why that something would be delayed, but at the same time, it's crazy to think that a team of people have managed to put something like that together. You know what I mean? It's
how's the online community taking the delay? Because
I think they've been for that game. For Cyberpunk, I think they've been really good because I think CD Projekt Red.
I know there's a lot of hype about that, wasn't there? People were very excited about that. So I'm just imagining what were they like when they got the delay.
From what I'm aware, it's been pretty well because CD Projekt has a really good public image because they are totally transparent with things. They just seem
and they're the owners of GOG as well, aren't they?
They just seem like a really cool company. But with something like The Last of Us 2 being delayed, people seem to be really. Not really irritated, but there seems to be an irritation surrounding that because of the overtime stuff that's come leaking out of it.
When was it due out?
Which game?
Last of Us. Last of Us 2. When was that due to come out?
End of May. So it was originally going to come out in April, then they set it back a month because they were a little bit behind, a month delay.
When were these delays announced?
The April one, I think, was a month before, in February or something like that, maybe March. And the May one was just literally a couple of weeks ago.
And has it got anything to do with what's going on in the world?
The May one has, yeah. They've had to send everyone home. No one can work on the product. But the original delay, from what I'm aware, is because they were behind.
So they were already behind, and then this happened, and
it couldn't have been. It must have just been a polish fix, though. But still, that's a month of. I'm guessing it's a lot of extra work for the guys who are working on it. That's I'll put stress on them. But because of the rumors that have been spiraling around that company and the overtime rumors, people seem to hate it. I'll not hate it as such, but kind of I've been a bit more cruel towards it. If that makes any sense.
Do you think taking the way the world is at the minute, could a lot of this be pent up frustration as well? Because
probably.
I think a lot of people probably round about now are looking for an outlet anyway.
They've got less things distracting them on a day-to-day basis, don't they?
That too, but they've probably also got a lot more frustrations and concerns and worries, and I bet you for some, just having even just an angry comment on the internet might make them feel a little better.
Yeah.
Here's something I want to kind of rewind back on a little bit. It's I was saying people are annoyed about the overtime standards that's apparently going on with the Last of Us development team at the minute. But I said earlier, is this not kind of a victim of kind of what is expected from the big budget games now? The expectation of these is almost too much. It's just kind of what this game is going to be unbelievably good. This company doesn't put out shit, and it's just are people's expectations for this too much now? And when the company has to try and meet those expectations, obviously the development team has to work extra hard to do that. And when people hear about their favorite company, I mean, not so much overworking their staff, I don't want to say that because I don't know, but kind of their staff having to work that a little bit harder, they don't like that. But it's it seems to be the standards have to be changed a little bit because you either make a slightly not diluted product, but something a little bit less than what you would want. People don't get worked as hard, it'll probably come out on time, but it might not be the AAA experience you're expecting, or you get that AAA experience and it might get delayed, and the people working on it have to work that a little bit harder. It's do we have to take our expectations down a little bit because not everybody can be the GTA 5s of the industry?
But even then, when you're saying GTA 5 was this product that upon its release was polished to hell, but also after this, they don't set deadlines at Rockstar. Well, they set deadlines but they don't set release dates as often. They're not one of these companies.
Yeah.
They just go, our next game comes out when it comes out, deal with it, kind of thing. So they don't set that. But also, while they don't set these release dates, it's not like everyone at Rockstar's getting to put their feet up. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like
That's exactly
they are like
it,
one of the. From what I've heard, this is one of the worst companies for crunch, and it's in working conditions. Like Rockstar doesn't have a great reputation when it comes to how they treat their staff. So, in that respect, they don't give the customers a release date because I don't think they need to build that hype. Like I think they have this kind of ongoing hype for anything that Rockstar produces that will just bubble over, and as it gets closer and closer to release, the fans will generate their own hype. They don't need release dates and 2 years down the line to get them excited about a product from Rockstar, so they can just crunch all the time and treat their staff like shit, and then they don't miss any deadlines.
Like, generally from what I hear, like, it's not so much like treating their stuff like shit. I generally think, like, everybody is kind of on the same, but no one really at the end of the day wants to crunch. But at the same time, it's it's more the individual's investment into what they're making is, I think, where a lot of crunch comes from. I don't think I know a lot of people work in the industry, and I hear very few stories where they're chained to their desks, if you know what I mean. You can't help but get invested with it. But at the same time, like, going back to what I'm saying, this crunch exists, and we hear all these, like, horror stories about crunch. And it's like, it's just the expectation of what we want from, like, a top product now, or even kind of like a mid-tier one, just too much. Should we kind of, like, think, we don't need all these, like, amazingly rendered visuals, we don't need all these amazing, like, particle effects or whatever. Like, every console that's ever came out, as far as off the top of my head, the least powerful one is usually the one that's the most successful.
Do you not think they've created that problem themselves, the gaming industry, rather than it being a consumer problem? I think if the consumers never found out about these projects or weren't really fully aware, or there wasn't a lot of hype around them, which is created by the companies, I don't think there's that many consumers knocking around that are constantly raging at companies for falling behind on deadlines that they've set themselves. What they're doing is companies are looking at different times of the year and different buying cycles and going, we want our game to be in this window right here. That's why they've given that deadline for that game. And then what ends up happening is they miss their own deadline, and then they crunch their staff because, they have to make that deadline. I don't think it's a consumer. I think if they sat down and asked 1,000 consumers when they want their game out, they'd be shocked at the response. They'd be like, whenever it's ready. We don't need it ahead of it being ready.
We've got tons of games we can be playing right now.
You've got plenty of time. So I feel like the companies are creating their own problems by hyping their own products before they know that they're going to be ready to be shipped.
Yep. I think that's a big... Yes, I would agree with that.
I think not only are they creating the problems, I mean, the problem is that they're creating the problems by setting their own deadlines, but as you said, they're setting their deadlines because they want the game to be released at a certain period of the year. Ideally, they want the game to make its way onto the market without competition. If you get me, if a similar games will offset their release dates. Like, some games will be delayed not because they're not finished. In some cases, they'll hold back releasing them because they don't want to have the same release date as a competitor, or they'll want to beat it to market. If you get me, and
similar to the movie industry, isn't it? Really.
The film industry has this worse because a film you have to go and see at a certain time, but a game you can just have
but
in your library and play it at your leisure. But yeah, films have it much worse because you don't want that big opening weekend to be the same time as a very similar film coming out. But with games, it has some games will be, this is the must-have game for Christmas. And in that respect, these deadlines are set because this is the perfect opportunity for what we've invested. This is how we're going to get the most of the money back because our game is going to be the game. Especially if you're AAA, you have to have that. You're investing millions in this game. It has to come out. It has to be the game that everyone's opening on Christmas Day, for example. If we miss that deadline, people are not going to buy our game in the same numbers if it comes out in mid-February, for example. You know, that's just it's just not going to work. So in some cases, just because of the mechanics of how the business works, they have to set these deadlines because the insane amount of money that they've invested that they have to recuperate. You know, that they're big gambles, and these deadlines, I assume these deadlines and release dates exist to offset the big gamble. You know, the better they can control when the game comes out, the more they can maximize the profit on the product.
Yep.
But they are setting themselves their own product because they're doing these big gambles with games with, you know, huge budgets. Games with huge budgets have to, you know, have this cycle of the marketing leading up to release so that everyone's at like breaking point when it comes out, so that people will, you know, queue around the corner to, you know, for midnight releases and stuff like this. Like, they need it. It doesn't work otherwise. If you're going to sink all this money into the product, every bit along the way, the release date, the marketing campaign, everything has to lead up to this like big day in which everyone goes mental and buys the game. So they create their own. They, you know, in AAA, they've created, like you said, they've created this problem, and there's nothing they can do about it unless they want to, you know, maybe go down to like AA or play it, you know, play it safe.
I don't know if there's just maybe another technique they can, in terms of their marketing, or instead of, you know, I guess I'm trying to think of an example. The only one I can think of is it Bethesda did a reveal for the next Elder Scrolls game a couple of years ago. Was it a year ago? A couple of years ago?
It was a year ago,
like,
I think.
It's like 20-second video of just like a shot across some landscape.
Mm-hmm.
And
what's
like,
the point?
They talked about that, and I'm like, right, you've immediately now hyped up a bunch of people and set like
set the wheel in motion.
Yes, like you've got a group of people now, like basically going to constantly ask you, when's this coming out? When's this coming out? When's this coming out? It's like, why don't you just wait until you've got almost a game, and then give yourselves a bit of time then?
They did, Fallout 4, they did perfectly. Like, it was made, pretty much, and they announced the release date 5 months before it came out, as I recall, and
yeah,
no
they
one was
announced
disappointed.
Fallout Shelter at the same time as well, didn't they? It was that release, wasn't it, where they went, we're building a new Fallout game, and it's almost done, and everyone's like, what, that's amazing, no, you know, we've flipped our lids over this.
If anything, the hype's like even more, because if you get told as a consumer, this project that you love has already been, like, we're nearly done it, you're going to be even more excited to purchase that game. So maybe there is just, instead of studios thinking, how can we get 2 or 3 years worth of marketing, why don't we think, like, how can we get 3 months or 4 months of, like, insane marketing right at the end of producing this game when we know it's going to be a great product?
Well, how awesome are the releases when they when, you know, I'm not big into like E3 and these shows because it's I don't know who they're for, but occasionally the best presentations I like is where some guy from some studio gets on stage and goes, you know, and it's just like, hi, I'm from this studio, yada yada yada, you might know us for this game, and by the way, the follow-up to that really famous game that we made that yous all loved, it's out, and it's out now, and like then you hear everyone lose their shit in the crowd because they're like, what the fuck, like every journalist in the crowd is like, how do I download this game? I'm sat here in this fucking conference hall, and
there'll be tons of hype across like social media and everything, and loads of people go out and download it because it's right then and there. There's no like
love a mental
delay.
live release of something.
Yeah, like why don't they do it more like that? Like
they did it with Half-Life Alex, not day and date, but like they announced Half-Life Alex a handful of months before it came out, and like, oh yeah, by the way, we've secretly been making this for like the past 3 or 4 years.
That's what it is.
we made.
There should be more like that now, more like
100%
secret games that are being made.
It's so much more exciting to like have that immediate like, oh, and it's out soon. You're like,
at least with AAA, I think this wouldn't work with indie devs because indie devs need to build up this knowledge of their game
there's a
because their release is nothing. But yeah,
it's a different mentality
but
with
no
indie,
one's
though,
bothered.
isn't there? Yeah, like no one's going to be sitting there. Everyone's just like, take your time. As soon as that's ready, I'll buy it type of thing. No one.
Yeah, don't look at the release dates on Steam for any indie games and actually believe them.
Indie just have a hard time getting notices there. They can't afford the big marketing budgets. If they get lucky, they might get like Sony or Microsoft or whoever backing them, putting them on the front page of the PSN store, the Xbox store. Yeah, they have a tougher time in that regard, but
yeah.
Aye, delays, not the best thing in the world, but I hope they result in better products and the staff aren't getting too worn out.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Bandits podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please leave us a review and subscribe to us on your podcast app of choice. You can also find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and now Twitch, where we'll be regularly streaming both retro and indie games. Ta-ra for now!